Well, happy Saturday, folks. The real Captain Kirk here. We're live from One Bethlehem Plaza here in downtown Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. A lot to cover today, so we're going to move at warp speed here. If you like summer, you've got 2 weeks left, and if you're hoping for fall, you've got 2 weeks until fall. So 22 September, Sunday, around 8:44 in the morning, fall will arrive. We did a fun segment with Allison down at Fox with Forecasting with Friends down in Texas, Houston, Texas, FOX26. So again, live from our studio this past week, talking hurricanes, fires, and well into 2025. So again, let you watch some of that and the video links below. Again, speaking of hurricanes, again, everyone thought it was going to be a bust here. Again, starting off strong, and then this last few weeks has been the least active in 50-plus years. That's about to change. Again, MJO cycle is becoming very favorable, and again, the thing that was suppressing it is going away. So again, we are here, day 97, and then we've got 84 days left. So we have, just because we're nearing the peak, September 10th, doesn't mean we're over. We're actually only about halfway through the season here. So we do expect it to get very active here for the latter half of the core season. In fact, if we look here just a couple days ago when we did the TV segment, there was not much hope of anything in the Gulf, and then just like that, it looks like we could actually have our named storm, maybe even a hurricane heading toward Texas, the Gulf Coast here in a few days. So again, things can develop quickly, and again, that other system out in the Central Atlantic could become a threat for U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico here as we get into next week. So tropics look to be coming alive here. We can see that in the 14-day track. We see very likely Francine, at least a tropical storm, maybe a Cat 1 hurricane or better. We'll see. And then Gordon here could be as we get toward the latter part of next week, again, threatening the Virgin Islands. So again, not to get lulled to sleep here, because we do think the season will get very active. Conditions are becoming very favorable, especially as the MJO cycle is now flipping into a favorable phase. One thing that's very clear here is we are heading back toward a droughtish cycle. We peaked at 82% of the country in dry to drought phases back on November 2022, a little over 2 years ago. It plummeted at only 26% of the country as of 1 June, so it was very, very wet as of 1 June this year. Again, one of the least in decades. And then now we're bouncing back up to 65% of the country map left there in dry to drought phases. So again, that's well above average, and again, the most in over 12 years. So again, a theme as we go into 2025. You're hearing about La Nina. Again, it's not even officially La Nina yet, but the atmosphere is already starting to respond, very clear. There's lots of cycles out there, the PDO cycle, EPO, AMO, Solar Max, hurricanes. MGO is very critical, what's been happening in the pulses that go through the equatorial Pacific in India. So again, a lot of factors to consider here. And again, one thing we know about this La Nina is it's probably going to be short-lived. We can already see some warmer subsurface temperatures developing below the La Nina surface waters. So again, we think this will be kind of a 6-month type event, and by spring it'll be pretty much over. Models kind of hinted that too, so models left and right here. Again, whether it's weak to moderate, it's somewhere in that phase. But again, going very quickly into a neutral phase. So this doesn't look to be a 3-year event like we had previously a few years back. And again, this is just some of the cycles over the back to 1950 here. So reds are the El Niños, the big ones, and we had a big one back last year. Again, wasn't the biggest in history by any means. Media hyped that up too much, but again, it was a strong El Nino, transitions to a weak to moderate La Nina, and then back to neutral here. And then, unfortunately, again, a lot of folks just, NOAA says that this is what La Nina means. That's not true. You have to factor in all these other cycles to really understand what the effect will be on the winter ahead. But generally, the theme is a cooler, potentially snowier for the northern half of the country. We believe more toward the Midwest, Great Lakes, interior Northeast, and even potentially coastal Northeast would be the recipients of a more favorable winter, if you like cold and snow. Severe weather season here as of 5 September. Again, we're kind of getting out of the core season here, so we're going to kind of flatline through the rest of the year, but it'll just a gradual increase. Tornadoes were the big hit, as expected. We said it'd be the worst in 13 years. It was the worst in 13 years. In fact, it was the second worst in history, up 23% over last year, 40% above average. Ironically, you had a lot of tornadoes and thunderstorms, but hail way down. So 20% below last year, 9% below average. Winds were down versus last year. Winds are just kind of straight line wind events, can come from cold fronts, not just necessarily thunderstorms, but that was actually above average, just not as much as last year. One thing we see coming back to life here, again, polar vortex talking in September, but again, it disappears across the North Pole. It heads to the South Pole, so during their winter. Now as we're transitioning toward our fall winter, we can see it coming to life here. So it's just the typical event. It happens usually in September, October, and we're starting to see it come back to life here. So again, we do believe this will be a weaker polar vortex this winter. Again, a lot of other cycles and oceans that would suggest that, and that actually just allows the cold air at the North Pole to invade the northern hemisphere and Canada, the U.S., as we more frequently than under a strong polar vortex. So again, weakish is kind of the theme. We'll see. Look at last week, world summer here, week ending here today. Cold in the U.S. here. Again, we've kind of had a up and down pattern here, but this was definitely a cold week. 4 degrees colder than last year, coldest in 70 years, 17th coldest in 39 years. So below average national temperatures here. In fact, very cool from, again, Texas to Minnesota and all points east. So this big map is trends versus last year. Hot west, again, particularly the Pacific Northwest. Rainfall also up about 96% over last year nationally, and that makes it 19th driest, so about in the middle of the pack average. But again, wet spots would have been the Northeast and down toward Texas. This is a favorable trend here for retail seasonal sales, fall merchandise, back to school, you name it. Colder, wetter weather at this time of year, the more it is, the better it is for retail seasonal sales. This week, again, we're going to be watching that potential Francine impacting the Texas coast, Gulf Coast area. So, again, Houston, 5+ inches. Now, again, if we get a tropical storm or hurricane, this could go way up. But they don't need this. Again, they've already the second wettest in history for year to date down in Houston, and they just can't handle any more rain. So this is concerning. We'll have to see here. But, again, flooding will be the big theme here. I don't know if it'll have enough time entirely to become a major hurricane, but could become a hurricane. So we'll have to watch this here later this week. U.S. overall about 0.2 warmer than last year, actually, just a hair warmer, so 9th warmest in 39 years, so above average. But the cool weather has shifted more to the Texas and the Carolinas, and the hot weather is moving out of the Pacific Northwest. They'll get some relief here as it heads into the plains. And again, rainfall, while it's down nationally 37% and driest in 12 years, don't tell folks in the Gulf and Florida about that because it's going to be pretty stormy down there. Next week here, as we get into mid-September here, hard to believe, the third week, see that warming pattern shifts, so it becomes much below normal temperatures in the west, and warming in the plains shifts into the northeast New England. So a very transient pattern here, so don't expect it to last too long, whatever you have. But again, for the week overall, 0.4 warmer than last year, warmest in 6 years, second hottest in 39 years, again, much above average. So we're going from very cold that we've had here in the northeast. We've already had frost and freezes in some areas in New England, and again, going to much above here mid-month. 90-degree days up a hair, up about 7% versus last year, and precip down 15% versus a year ago, fourth driest in 39 years. Some of that heavier rain shifts into areas that they need it, more into the Rockies and the plains, continued wet there in Houston. So we'll have to watch that again. Flooding is a very big concern for Texas. In fact, we don't even think this next one, Francine, is the last for Texas. We think the pattern is very conducive to the Caribbean and taking tracks more towards South Florida and Texas this year. And if we just aggregate these world 2-week trends here through the 21st, again, you see the, again, kind of hard mixed match here. You've got cool to warm to hot. So again, but the overall theme is the weather is hot going from the northwest into the plains and eventually transiting into New England. Again, precip map inset left. Generally, again, a dry theme. Again, we'll have to see a hurricane can change that, but right now dry along the immediate east coast. And if we look at, again, the precip totals here, again, you see the very wet weather continuing there in Africa. That just suggests, again, we have a lot of tropical waves going through Africa, and those are the systems that move into the Atlantic, and any one of ththose can flare up into a major hurricane. And we do think that will become the theme here as we go through September, October, and maybe even into early November. So with that, folks, again, we hope you have a great week, and we will be back here again this time next week.